I also have to send a screenshot of our non-working stream count.
Hey, 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 if you're there, as always, let us know so we know what we don't know.
What?
Sorry, Hamilton. You realize Hamilton spent an entire song to basically explain he doesn't know what happened in that area. Hey, if you're there.
We just got a message from the past.
First set up.
I am sharing on Twitter.
David has joined us.
Hello. Share alike.
So many things in this box. It's so hard to prepare them all. We just have to pull them out as we go.
I suppose it is an acceptable solution.
Oh man, oh man, oh man. How are you doing, David? Has your week started well?
It's interesting.
As always, we will be officially starting in a few minutes after a bit of warm-up. We are also reporting issues we are having with Restream. Andre has joined us. Hey, Andre.
I've had many conversations with Restream support. They're quite awesome, actually. So I don't mind working with them.
Yeah, so Monday is another game day.
So I think we have a general pattern so far that Mondays are generally tabletop board game-ish days, and then Fridays are chill, let's hang out days.
Mm-hmm.
Sundays are, well, Saturday and Sunday are generally, we try to keep them either roundup stuff. Sundays is when we're more likely to do one of those quarantine check-in episodes.
And then
We'll try to do that once a
Fridays tend to be our
Fridays
long
is
episodes.
it's just fun. And then I don't know about future interviews. We're thinking about. I was thinking about should we try to interview some of the queens who will be in the House Party Queens event on Saturday so that they can promote. But instead, I am promoting, hey, House Party Queens over Zoom Saturday. But more importantly, Dead Flies tomorrow. If you like Turing Quinto and you like experiential artistic experiences that are not necessarily drag, then catch Dead Flies.
And if you don't know what that means, it's okay. That's part of the experience.
Yes, they recommend that you have good headphones so that you can listen. So I guess Toby and I will be antisocial for the night and each listen on our respective headsets. But that sounds very interesting. Yes, Toby. What are you doing?
Maya joined us. Hey, Mai.
Yeah, we're helping plug Dead Flies tomorrow, 10 o'clock. It's an open ticket, pay what you want-ish, but starts at 100. So,
which is still quite,
yeah, it's affordable. And then House Party Queens on Saturday is $150, which isn't bad. Plus more chances to win Bacardi stuff. If you like texting. Unless they have new mechanics on Saturday. Who knows, right? They might change the mechanic. Uh, I haven't sent that many text messages in a long time. Because who do I text? I text Toby and people for work stuff. But otherwise, I just text Toby. So it's a board game. Don't have a song for the show.
Well, 9:08.
I guess you can start.
I guess it's gonna have a reason to start. Timer starts. This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy, our little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
This is completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Jonas, we talk about everything and anything, random live.
And if it's not your first time here, welcome back. It's another Monday, so it's board games or any type of games. And for the next 30 minutes, we are talking about Lowlands.
Lowlands, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Do you really like the Shut Up and Sit Down review? It's awesome. We're going to try to make this episode not sound like the Shut Up and Sit Down review of Lowlands, but we tend to agree with them on many things. Okay, Toby, let's go talk about sheep.
So Lowlands is a 2 to 4 player game by Claudia
and Ralf
Partenheimer.
It sounds like a husband
and Ralf Partenheimer.
Or brother and sister.
Which actually surprised me because it feels so much like a E.O.E. Rosenberg type of game.
Yeah.
It's got...
Because it has sheep. And that is already 50% E.O.E. Rosenberg. There are farm animals involved.
It's a strategic farming game where you take use of action points, set collection, tile placement, worker placement, and sheep.
Wait. I wouldn't call it a farming game. You just happen to have sheep.
No, racing sheep is still a farm thing.
That is true, I suppose.
I mean, it's a pastoral game.
Then it sounds religious. But it's also a dike building game.
But basically, in this game, you present workers who are working in the lowlands. So while you are trying to build your structures to increase the number of your sheep, you have the ever-looming threat of the possible floodwaters rising. Because, well, being in the lowlands, there's always that...
You are below sea level.
Actually, it's not. There's a possibility.
It will flood.
It will flood. So it's a question of, will you work together to raise the dike to prepare and defend yourselves from the rising waters?
Wow, it sounds like a war.
Or will you allow the flooding to happen so everyone else who has sheep suffer and you are still happy with your points?
And your name is Toby.
Hey! The game is an impressive amount of content in a single box.
Yes, with unique player boards.
Yeah. Each player has their own player board, which is composed of a 4x5 grid. This grid is different for each player because of the features on it.
Yes, like bushes, trees, and little lakes.
Yeah, there were lakes. Yeah, you're right.
I play Lowlands.
There are as well what we call the dike pieces, which come in 3 colors. These are used to build the dike on the main board, which also tracks the score and progress of the players.
Well, your dike score.
Yes, that's true. It's not your final score. Because while you can earn points depending on how much sheep you have, you also earn points depending on your dike points. And both have varying values depending on how you've been performing in the game.
So the game focuses around, I think most of it is worker placement for action and tile placement. 2 mechanics we love a lot because I don't know why we like to torture ourselves putting tiles on the board. But what is different is that you have the same action spaces, and they're like action spaces for each of you. Hi, Noel. So it's not like a regular other worker placement games where there is a shared pool of slots. You can only take each action once, and once someone does the action, you can't do it. In this case, everybody can do the same actions at least once. There's just extra cost if you do it again. So that's a quirky aspect of Lowlands.
Part of the strategy is knowing when to use specific workers. Workers have values which determine their action points, and certain buildings are not usable.
Yeah, you need to have, I don't know, a high enough number worker. This has nothing to do with the numbers of workers in the village. So, but it feels similar.
So this is the main board. As you can see, it's smaller than the village,
and it does not video well.
But as you can see, there's sheep.
There's sheep, there's lots of circles, there's a grid, and there's lots of water above.
The lower part is where resources cards are placed in order to see what's available for all the players. Here we have the point values that are the values that you get at the end of the game for each sheep and for your dike points. And then at the top is the dreaded dike and flooding area. Would you like to explain that part?
Okay, so at the challenge of every round of Lowlands, when everybody runs out of actions, is that we're going to have to check the dike. There are cards that are played that represent the floodwaters, and if the amount of flood tokens are greater than the dike that has been built, it will flood, and that's bad. And everybody gets flood tokens, which is bad, maybe, but only at the end of the game. So, the dike mechanic, though, is strange. And I think before we really talk about the dike, should we talk about the actions on the boards?
Okay, I'll have to draw them out.
You're going to have to dig out the board.
So you'll have to talk about anything else while I'm drawing them out.
This game has sheep. They look exactly like the sheep in Caverna. And that's why it makes you think they are Uwe Rosenberg sheep. Okay. The boards are very green, if you notice, and there's all this, I don't know how to position, negative space that represent action. Oops, where am I pointing? Or represent actions, which is hard to tell. But basically, what you can do is that you can build a building or like place a tile basically on your farm. You can build the dike. There is a build the dike action. There is putting fences, because of course you need to fence in your animals. There is buying or selling of sheep. And then there's drawing resource cards from the central pool. Going back to the dike, the funny thing is that everybody can take the dike action. You use a specific resource to build the dike. It kind of gets harder to build the dike later in the game. That's just the way it goes. But then the funny thing about Lowlands is that every time someone takes the build the dike action, they must then ask someone else, hey, do you want to help me build the dike? So if I build the dike, I get points. And then I can go, Toby, you want to build the dike? And Toby will think about it. And then he'll say no. Well, and that's the tricky thing. Because sheep points and dike points at the end of the game are sort of at war with one another. The more secure the dike is against the flood, the higher the value of sheep.
Yes.
But the more the dike breaks, the higher the value of dike points. So it's kind of funny. Like, do I want to help build the dike and help all the people who are building sheep?
Because you're not taking actions to get sheep.
Or do I build the dike now and then screw them over later on so that I get more points because I'm higher on the dike track?
Making the dike building more challenging is the fact that in the early part of the game, building the dike is quite easy. You use these larger pieces, which allow you to pretty much
I really thought about this.
Build the wall as soon as you can.
Let me take the caption out. Look, it's a dike wall!
In this case, for example, the flooding still beats the wall. Flooding still happens. But if you did one more dike action, yay,
we're safe!
Until, of course, the water starts to
rise.
No,
the flood tiles are stackable!
The water starts coming in again. To counter that, players then find themselves having to continue building the dike. But then notice the
tile pieces are smaller, but they require the same amount of resource cards to build. Delightful.
So as the water starts chasing after you, you might continue building more to make sure that the flooding doesn't happen.
And this is like where the key strategy of Lowland begins to happen, and people decide, am I gonna build the dike or not?
Mhm.
It's like a inherent traitor mechanic in the game, where in the beginning, sure, I'll help build the dike. Let's all build the dike. Let's all build the dike. And then suddenly towards the end, no, I'm not helping you build the dike.
Eventually, you will need to continue building the dike to the third level. And notice, it's even smaller. Oops, sorry, you'll have to remove the caption.
I can do that. Wow!
So as you can see, from what earlier took just 3 turns to build the wall that will last you a number of rounds, suddenly it's smaller and smaller to the point that, in some instances, the hell with the dike.
Let my sheep get washed away.
So this mechanic is amazing because it forces you to try to, I guess you could say, plan ahead and estimate what the other players will do. Increasing the challenge in building the dike is the fact that there is a small chart, which we can see here, represented by the small boxes and these material boxes in the side. That chart determines the type of materials you must use to build the dike. And if, let's say, in the previous turn, someone built it using stone, you cannot use stone again until someone has built the dike using wood, or I was about to say wool. Stone, wood, and what was the other one?
Clay.
Yeah, clay.
Clay or brick, depending on how katan you are.
So we can see here the resource cards are... Oops, I held it upside down.
Well, because people don't put the cards back in the same order, I spend so much time trying to fix those cards, Yes.
Now, one might wonder, so if there's so much emphasis in building the dike, how does one expect the waters to rise? How quickly do they move? So as mentioned earlier,
they're flood cards!
And the flood cards range in a value of numbers. Sometimes you'll just have to add 1.
And there's a sequence. That's like
other
first,
times you'll add as many as 5.
Yeah, the initial cards are like add 1 to 3, and then the next set is like add 4 to 6, and like holy crap.
The back of the cards give you a hint of what's to come. This is 4 to 6. That is 4 to 6. This is 1 to 3. But of course, you might be thinking, it's 1 to 3, then there's no need to build it because it's 1 to 3. Then it turns out to be a 3, and you hate yourself for ignoring it that round.
Yeah, we've had like 3, 3, 3.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no. Noel is having trouble over on Facebook. He says black screen of death. But we seem to be live.
Yeah,
so
I see it here.
It's a Facebook-specific drop.
And it might be specific to
you. Sorry, you'll need to restart. Hello, Carlo. Thank you for joining. Pico was a little late. Don't worry. We're still talking about sheep and dikes.
What else? The cards themselves, the resource cards themselves have a mechanic.
Well, we should talk about... I guess we should talk about the board. Because the first action is to build like a tile. And there's like 3 different types. Sometimes they're just like pastoral upgrades. So they're buildings, and you can only build 4 actual buildings throughout the game. And then I forgot the other type of building. But the features.
Yes.
And basically, using your little tableau, and look, there's like trees and bushes and stuff. Depending on the tiles you purchase, they may make use of these things. Like you might get points for every bush that's in a fence, or you might get points for every tree that's not in a fence.
Or you might earn extra sheep the moment you fence off this area.
Yeah, because they eat the berries, things like that. So there are all these little rules that come with the different buildings, and the buildings are unique. I think all the building tiles are unique. And you have to kind of figure out, and because each player board is different in terms of arrangement of what features you have, then everybody has different choices to make, different strategies to try. There's this crazy one called the pet shop, where in the space between 2 buildings, you can put a sheep. I don't know why this is a pet store, but that's how it goes. So you end up wanting to put your buildings in a 2x2 grid so that you can maximize and have 4 sheep between buildings.
Now, for those who might be wondering why all this importance for fences, placement rules exist in this game.
Yeah, you can't put sheep unless you have a fence.
And you can't have more than a certain number of sheep until certain structures help you.
But they'll keep having babies, they just run away.
Well, that's true.
It's not a farming game unless they make babies. So you just don't get to keep them. So that's so you'll have to, and it becomes this weird, like, you know those matchstick puzzles, like move one stick and make a new configuration. Then you're gonna do a lot of that because building fences is different from moving fences, which takes the same action spot.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're just gonna want to rearrange the fences so that you can hold more sheep because you've built one in previous turns. But yeah, at no point can the fence be open at the end of your turn.
Yes.
Your sheep must be safely secured every round in order for the move to be valid.
Now,
we love sheep.
Part of what makes the game interesting is that every player, in addition to their player board, has their own...
This game has a lot of boards.
What's the official term for this one?
I don't know. The fence board.
I guess it's like your personal upgrade board.
It's where the fences come from.
Because when you look at it now, all you see is a mess of all these objects. And the reason for that is when you prepare the game, you actually cover this up with the different items. This middle area with the long rectangle tends to be covered up with the fences.
With the fences.
And then here in the top, they're covered up with the...
4 houses that you put whenever you build a building.
Yes. And these... similar to games like Great Western Trail, they are rewards that are triggered and are earned the moment you have finally uncovered them.
The symbology is not the most beautiful we have ever seen in the game, but it's consistent enough and you'll figure out what they mean.
And once you've gotten the hang of it while playing, it starts getting really smooth.
Yes.
It's just that initial friction point of, what the hell is this supposed to mean?
Because, like, what are all these dudes? And that's the shape of a worker. He looks like a fat man with a weird hat. So, it's a thing. And then there are, like, these little additional bonus tokens, which I don't know if I want to bother explaining because it just gets weird.
Now, a large part of the game is knowing when you should focus on building, when you should focus on the market, for example.
You focus on sheep.
Or when you should focus on gathering resources.
Yes.
There are hand limits to the number of resources you have.
Which is also dependent on your fence board.
And you will notice here at the lower portion, this grid with the sheep drawings. This is the market. So what does that mean? At the start of the round, even before players buy or sell sheep, there would be 3 available sheep in the market.
This depends on number of players.
The player board changes depending on the number of players, as shown here and as shown here. Now notice that there are only 6 slots in the market. What does this mean? Even if you've decided that your tactic in the game is to be the meat producer,
the sheepmonger,
you will still only be allowed to sell
3
up
sheep
to the number of available spaces on the board. So if this board currently has 3 sheep and there are only 3 other spaces, then you can only sell 3.
Then you go, Toby, why did you fill up the market again?
You always make it sound like I planned everything.
It is.
I have.
See? He admits it on camera. It is the truth.
The tooth. The tooth. Suddenly we're doing again.
Remember the tooth.
The game does try to help the players, however. As mentioned earlier, the personal board already has all the iconography. And then every player also starts with a small guide board, which, again, looks terrifyingly intimidating. But once you get the hang of the inks...
Why is there a ruler on the side of the board?
Why are there so many colors? What's with the Roman numerals?
Why are we font size 8? But it makes sense.
Yeah, so as you can see here, it lays down that there's the turn of the tide, the work phase, the upkeep phase, the high tide phase, the storm surge.
Just like towards the end.
And knowing when those phases are coming in is important because certain buildings have certain effects on specific phases. You might have a building that only allows you to earn extra coins on a certain phase. You might have buildings that allow you to sell sheep during certain phases.
And then, like, if you look at the symbols, why does this look like we're hanging a sheep? But no, it means that this space can hold 3 sheep. And then, where's the stat? Look at this one. And then, see, there it is again. We're hanging sheep again. It's the pet shop. See, it's the one between buildings. And this one, what's
the worker
the face-up card? Oh, and it's like for every flood tile, something happens. So, I mean, the symbols aren't great. There's going to be a lot of reading when you first try the game because you're trying to figure out what the heck do these buildings do. And because there are unique buildings all over the place, it will be a while before you kind of get a feel for what comes out and really build strategies. But it's oddly exciting. And it's another one of those interesting games that hyper-focused on a unique human experience.
Yes.
The raising of sheep in the lowlands. And has built it into this beautiful game.
The game captures a lot of what we love from other games like Caverna. But somehow successfully makes it a game that's so much shorter. We have had sessions within a single hour.
Yes.
Which freak us out because they weren't terrible sessions, but they were so tightly designed that we were like, wait, it's the last round. Wait, it's the last round.
The flood is coming.
And it doesn't feel like you weren't able to do anything. It always feels like there wasn't enough time to do more, but it still feels like a whole game.
I always feel like the dike is never going to get built. And yet, half the time, the dike does get built. And then, like, oh, good thing I have sheep.
And a large part of that dike problem is also because of how the dike points work. As you can see here in the circles, there are portions in the circles that have the larger circle. And those larger circle spaces tend to have tokens that give you free bonuses.
And the bonuses go on your board.
And make them upgraded. Allow them to do more efficient things. But part of the system of that point area is that if you are the person behind...
You are the first to move, right? I know, but you will get the penalties later on.
You suffer the penalties.
Only when the floods happen.
So there is that idea of if you're not building the dike, then you will suffer the pain.
But if the dike gets built, the flood tokens you collected do not matter. They get discarded at the end of the game.
So it's that question of, do you try to psych out other players to build it? Do you read and understand whether they plan to or not and use that to your advantage? Or do you just hope for the best and keep asking, will you help me?
Will you help build the dike? And then half the time, figuring out if people can actually help you requires you to pay attention to the cards that people have been buying and using because of the fact that the dike building is resource locked every time. So if someone starts with clay, then all other slots of the dike must be built with clay. If it starts with stone, all built with stone. Then you have to remember, who the heck has stone? Did someone get a lot of stone from the market or did they blind draw cards? Did they spend all their stone on a building? So many things to remember. So you really have to watch your competitor. Because sometimes you can ask your best friend in the game, do you want to build the dike? It's like, I'm so sorry, I don't have the resource you need.
And that person might really want to.
Yeah, or worse,
they just don't have the
They're
resource.
like, you didn't pay attention. I have one card in my hand. So I can't build the dike.
And there is that rule that the person who helps you can only help you 1 point lower than how much you did.
Yes.
They are not allowed to outshine you when they help you.
So you don't get as many dike points, but you still get dike points.
So even if, let's say, we both wanted to do the dike, and I had 5 stone, but Rocky was only able to build it with 2 wood, I can only use 1 stone. Because, I can use 2 stone because you would have a +1 for free for being the first one to do the building action. But that's part of the system, which is amazingly frustrating. Devious, that's the best word.
But, that's just how it goes. Competitive dike building is challenging.
So this game is quite an interesting mix because it feels semi-cooperative in the sense that you all want... whether or not the points are affected there is that psychological desire to build the dike when you see the waters rise.
Especially because it's the upper part of the board. You see, it's just huge.
And when
how can you not be building the dike?
And when the wooden pieces start growing in number, you can't help but keep looking at it and wait, I'm worried about that.
But you could be that guy who tries to not care about the dike, but somehow be ahead in dike points. No, there's no way. You have to build the dike for dike point. So I don't know. It's a conundrum.
The buildings offer amazing different combinations. So even if the game looks smaller than Caverna with a much smaller number of buildings, there are still so many combinations to try. That plus the fact the board is different each time you play.
And the building assortment is unique. I mean, because you only have like 3 or 4 tiles visible at any time. So you will not see all the buildings. Unlike Caverna, they're all laid out and then you can kind of choose and based on strategy. You're also dealing with luck in terms of what buildings come out.
What are available at that specific
So you can't
moment.
start out and say, I'm going to build a pet shop, and the pet shop never shows up. Then no.
Or worse, I'm going to build the pet shop, then someone grabs it.
His name is Rocky. My job is to take tokens away from Toby.
And lastly, there are interesting, I guess you could say, mechanical tricks you can do in the game. Like there are some buildings that trigger whenever the fences happen.
Yeah.
So you could find yourself using the rearrange fences action to move things around just so that you can bring them in. You're looking for the super sheep.
I'm looking for our favorite
It's
sheep.
here. Of course, I hide it in mine.
Why do you have the sheep?
To make sure I always have it. So what Rocky is looking... Why did you throw it?
Useless sheep.
Why did you throw it? Okay, let's have the board there. So typically we have the sheep. As you can see, they're all...
These are your standard Eurogame sheep. Oh my god, I can't even hold them. Eurogame sheep.
Yeah.
Right? And see how thick they are. Woolly, fat, unpainted wood.
Yeah, so you can see there, those are the sheep. But there is the sad starving sheep, which I love taking care of because everyone else just makes fun of him because look how thin he is.
It's a weird production error sheep we have that he is half the width of a regular sheep. I don't know. So he's cut the same, but he's just half a sheep. But for our purposes, he's the best sheep.
Pico says, oh no, it's that sheep again. Bakit may nagpabato ng sheep?
David says the sheep looks like a hedgehog. That is true. These sheep look like hedgehogs.
Mine does share. I like how it's cooperative but competitive.
But really,
Andre also adds good balance. I dare say.
Half sheep. But it's our favorite sheep because of this.
So the sheep are all in a bag, and when you start the game, you grab sheep in order to build the market as well as to have your starting sheep. I've physically stolen him away and keep
Toby
him
is hidden the half sheep
in my player bag, so I make sure I always start with him.
Because we set up the player bags with like all the stuff you need to begin, including your starting sheep, your starting money, all that stuff.
That allows you to start games sooner. And at the end of every game, it also allows you to do a little bit of checking to make sure there's no missing pieces.
Yeah. So
we have had terrible moments of going home from a game night and then, wait, a month ago we played this. Why is it missing this? And
yeah, we had like, there was one time, like right after leaving, friends will like send us photos like, hey, there's like a legendary card here. Or
there's a token under the table.
Yes, and it's like a stupid tiny cardboard token. Like, oh no. So it's the life of owning board games that you will lose them a lot. But I still love the general sheep. They are white in Caverna. They're unpainted here. But everybody loves the half sheep. But Toby hoards the half sheep.
I will always get the half sheep, even in the market, even if I don't need it. Because the half sheep needs love. So, that is so much time spent on what Lowlands is about with so many injections and why we love it. Let's now focus on strategies.
There is no strategy. No, I say it's because you can only really decide on your strategy once you've seen
What's available?
what's available among the tiles, and from there, your base strategy may begin. You can. There are unique end game buildings.
Yes.
Which there are only 4 of them, and then you might want to map out your strategy based on an end game building.
But know that Rocky will always take those buildings away.
You can only buy 1 end game building, but you make sure it's the one that Toby wants, so that you have a better chance. But that's one way to map out your strategy. But really, it's like you're gonna have to look at the buildings and then kind of figure out like what you want to try, and that'll be like your initial strategy. And then mid game, it's gonna be staring at the freaking dike, because you can invest your heart out into growing and into raising sheep. But if the dike keeps failing, then at the end of the game, your sheep are gonna get washed away. But then if you see that the dike is doing pretty well mid game, then you must make a choice. Are you going to keep the dike going and hopefully you're also growing sheep? Or are you going to think about not helping to build the dike?
My other tips would be pay attention to the resource cards.
Yes.
It's always important to have at least in your mind what one resource, what each player has, at least one of their resources. So if you know that person has stone, you at least know if you ask for help that they will be able to do a 1-point motion. Don't underestimate the power of upgraded workers. Those extra moves are immense. I mean, if you have it on the draw card actions, that means you draw an extra card. If you have it on the rearrange fence action, that means you move an extra fence. And while it might sound like that's just one extra move, it's huge long term. Because if you think about it, if you got that in, let's say, in the early part of the game, and in the next 4 rounds, that means you actually had 4 extra actions for the rest of the game compared to everyone else. What else? The game is played for a total of 10 rounds, if I remember correctly.
But you're counting flood rounds. But basically, it's 3. No, 1, 2, like 6, 4 cycles of the.
Because it's 12 actions.
Because it's action upkeep. It's upkeep action upkeep action. So you don't have, and then you only have like 3 workers. So it's tough, man. It's a super tight game.
Every action matters.
Mitch asks, in your game stats, how many wins and losses? Well, surprise, surprise, Toby has won 7 out of 10 games of Lowlands that he has participated in.
That's supposed to be 8.
That's what the stats say. I have only won 2 out of the 8 games I have played. Mitch, who is on this participating in the stream, has won 1 out of 2 games.
Yeah, but Christian has the highest score. He's 100%.
Because it's 1 game. 1 out of 1.
He won the 1 game he played. But yeah, Lowlands is it's a very tight Euro game. It's got
Lowlands is like a lighter alternative to the likes of Agricola and Caverna and stuff. We always think of it this way. I know it may limit the game to call it that way, but it really feels like that because it has a lot of the same elements. Sheep,
building
things, sheep,
resources of different types that you have to spend for specific buildings,
fencing sheep,
and sheep that leave in painful ways. Whether they run away because you can't house them, or the flood.
Yeah, so, but we do enjoy this game a lot.
Highly recommended.
Even though I don't win a lot against Toby, obviously. Because he doesn't build the dike when I want him to build the dike. And then he builds the dike when I don't want him to build the dike.
Or when I want to rush for those upgrade tokens.
Yeah. He's pretty crafty with like choosing his upgrades. Toby's also determined a lot of ways to like earn, because when gold or coins in the game are victory points at the end of the game. So he does a lot of mid game scoring, especially when he buys and sells sheep.
Because there is that upgrade wherein you buy or sell a +1 coin
or -1 coin, so he can buy it cheaper and sell it at more expensive. So he keeps moving the market, but keeping it full of sheep, so nobody else can sell sheep. So this is my dilemma, people. So I keep trying to grow sheep, but why is busy buying and selling sheep? He's not building the dike.
Hey, there have been games I've done nothing but build the deck.
It's suspicious. And that's because you wanted dike points.
Because I focus on building points.
Yeah.
And I don't care about the sheep. So that's how the game works. It's super flexible that way. There's so many paths to victory, and we highly, 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 highly recommend Lowlands. If you want something like Caverna, but you're worried about having something so huge and it takes so long to set up, this is the game you might want to check out.
Go for Lowlands. And then I highly, highly recommend that you should look at the Shut Up and Sit Down review of Lowlands, because he does a thing with the sheep in the middle. That's awesome. I'm not going to say more.
Hey! And it's not really my fault that I'm playing other games while we're playing Lowlands.
That's worse, no? He's won most of the games of Lowlands we played. And then he's still playing freaking Through the Ages on his iPad. Toby is one of the few tabletop players I know who does casual Through the Ages on the side.
Hey, but I don't win it the way Mai and the others do.
Yeah.
And Tanya is the scary Through the Ages player.
Yeah, but you're still playing Through the Ages while we're playing another game and winning both.
No, not always.
Or worse, sometimes he's doing a weird Suburbia solo campaign scenario. It's going to be like connect SN, but then with like all these point requirements. And Toby 2 times on me a lot.
Hey!
With these games.
Hey, would you rather I play and just let you win?
That's not the point.
Oh my god, what's my action? I'll do this dumb thing. I won't do that, of course. It's nicer when you say, again! And that was 30 minutes. We had a lot of fun, and we hope you'll join us again next time. I'll let you have the small sheep.
No, you won't. If you have questions or suggestions for topics for future episodes, games that you wonder if we can feature, drag queens you want us to interview, I don't know. Fill up the Google form below, bit.ly, Baduy Pride Ideas. You can follow us on Twitter. He is all Toby, no shade. I am RG Sunico.
You can also check out our blog. That's baduypride.com. You'll see all the previous episodes. Some new recent posts that you've posted.
Because I'm a sentimental, mushy person in quarantine, I wrote about a friend.
And a lot of historical stuff about our life in our blog, which is baduypride.com.
And a few blog posts about that same friend, because we're family.
Yes.
Okay, and that's the thing. Yeah, you can continue the conversation below. What did you think about Lowlands? Have you played it? Do you like sheep? Did Toby let you touch the tiny sheep? He probably didn't.
Hey, I remember someone stealing it from me.
That's because you made the mistake of selling it in the market.
I need this too.
Be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And this is Baduy Pride.
Thanks for watching.
Happy sheep.